quickly time goes by, I'd like to introduce and give a warm welcome to Horace Bray. And the amazing Stuart Dean and Alexis Clareski.
Thanks, y'all. We're going to start off with a couple tunes that are going to come out on my next record. It's coming out later this year. This first one, let's do Ventura. bit slower, and it actually is one of the more recent songs that I wrote for this record that's going to come out. And it's called Hymn Song. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Good?
I'm gonna keep these for eBay. Get an autograph. Yeah, I need it signed.
So, I have a couple ideas of what we can talk about today. I'm curious, is anyone having an existential crisis about anything in particular? Like feeling really emotional about triads, or you should be. But I've kind of spent the last few years working, reworking and revisiting a lot of these fundamental things that I felt like I took for granted when I was first learning guitar, like the G major scale, just not all over the neck, just in one position. And I think I want to show you guys some of the things that I've been kind of messing with that, just to kind of like re-humble myself. So we think about like, what is the sound of G? We probably know all these like fancy chords for it. And ultimately it comes down to like, it has to have a G somewhere. Maybe not always in the guitar. Sometimes the bass player can be playing it. But this is the latch. We have a G. And we have G's kind of all over the neck. And if I want to describe the sound of G major, what would you guys say the next most important note for the sound of G major would be? The third, exactly. Sometimes people say the 5. I think the 5 is important. Not necessarily for the tonality, but like the 5 almost feels like the roux. It's like adds some. It's like leaving a soup overnight in the fridge. So now you have this sound, and you can play them a couple different ways. If I were to improvise only using these two sounds, the reverb helps put some makeup on it, but really like, what do we have to use if we limit ourselves just to G and B? So we can change the note. That's one thing. Does anyone have any ideas of what else we can affect? Let's see. Rhythm, yeah, rhythm. Articulation, the dynamics. How like what feelings you're trying to convey through that, maybe like the intent. So you can kind of some feelings out of that for sure. You can also play them in a pretty collapsed state. It can be either a third or a sixth. A lot of times people just kind of think of the third, but then I really am fond of sixths and tenths. So it gives like so much more openness. But let's not like dwell too much just on two notes. Let's add a third note. And if we're trying to like describe the sound of G major, not only, I don't like to think of it just as what feels like home, but what is like the immediate tension available. Because ultimately we're trying to create a strong emotional connection with this sound, and to not think about it like a scale, but to think about it like it's a melody. So let's use the 4. Now I'll wait to introduce it. All of a sudden, I feel like there's a new light that like came on in a room that kind of showed me how big the room was. It's way bigger than I thought it was. That was cheating. So now we get like this kind of sound. Now it really is starting to feel like a melody, at least for me. We can also imply a C major 7. Now we can add in, I don't know, let's see. Someone give me another scale degree to add in. Just shout one out.
6.
6, great. Played the 5, that was cheating. So the funny thing about with the 6 is that normally I would think of like this suspended G major sound as like, oh, that's like happy, you know, that's like, you know, very idiomatic and stuff. But when I first introduced that, it actually, for me, feels way more melancholy than I would ever expect. And the 6, which you would associate with like big, I don't want to cleanse the palate just yet, but like the 6 ends up feeling way more hopeful than I would expect it to feel. Now we really can imply the 4 chord. Because the 6 ends up feeling really different, you know, 6 down in the bottom. We know that feels moody, you know? Only those few notes that we've chosen. It's like, this is a great exercise to do because you have to really think about what you're not playing. Now we can add in the 5. Just that, kind of a basic scale pattern, but only using our limited scale that we're allowing ourselves to play. You know, you can do thirds through it. We have to skip the 7. So it's all leading us to kind of start to really treat this scale as a melody. Now let's keep it moving. Now the 2 feels super refreshing after not being able to play it, like not being allowed to play it for so long. And now I have so much respect for hearing the 7. and I'm not gonna take it for granted. And I feel like now I'm a lot less likely to just spit out the lick I've been playing nonstop for the last 5 years. So then, way more reverence for like that sound, which, you know, was for me was one of the first things I learned. Just like, you know, starting on the middle finger. And after I kind of get this framing for the scale, or whatever sound I'm exploring, then I like to kind of go into what I would think of like as a more traditional scale study over it. Like, let's take sixths. Sixths. Not worrying about like playing it really fast. Is almost more to make sure you're making eye contact with the sound, and you're not just playing. You want to be playing what you hear and not hearing what you play, and that's like a big framing, because then you can start to mess with it. Maybe do alternating. To really hear the melodies coming out in it. Go do like a paradiddle with it. Go up, down, up, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, or up, down. Start to do some fun things. I think this stuff is really fun, but yeah, and then you're like, okay, sit with it, maybe drink some water, stay hydrated. And now, like, you've kind of, you know, spent 15 minutes, like, reacquainting yourself with this sound that you live with almost every single day, you know? And now just this G major chord, for me, I hear way more of the possibilities because I feel like I've done my due diligence to make sure the room that I'm residing in has good lighting. And I'm not just like, oh, well, here's this one bright light on this one area and I don't need to explore anywhere else. That's like a good resting place. Does anyone have any like immediate like burning questions about this process? Or does this make sense to you guys? Cool. Let's go up a whole step and see how crazy A feels in this. And we're gonna work on this really hard song that is probably the first hard song that any of us learn, and that is about a song that's easy to take for granted. Because have you ever seen someone try to play it that hasn't thought about it? Because does anyone know, what's the weird thing about the first note in this song?
It's not roots.
It's not the root. And how many times do you see someone, and then you ruin the birthday. It's done. It becomes all about you and your mistake. But it's kind of a tricky one. And I was that person that messed up Happy Birthday about a year ago. And that created a fixation on really knowing this tune and asking myself, like, okay, what does it mean to really know a simple melody inside and out? Like it's your best friend, like it's your partner, your wife, whatever. Like, because I want to get to that same place that I got to with the G major scale. So, kind of 6/5. It goes to the 1 chord. Dominant 1, kind of like in a blues. Or wait, what am I saying? On the 1 chord goes to the 5 chord, then back to 1. Still on the 1 chord. Crazy suspension. Like, Steely Dan, like, you know? So, if I want to really know this tune, and don't worry, this applies to any song that isn't Happy Birthday. But, so, I'm just going to play the melody. I'm going to play it through twice, and I'm going to try to not waver. Treat it like it's a meditation. Try to see yourself in the melody and find this, like, balanced place with it. And I'll add in the roots. Figure out how to finger it. Already that gets a little tricky because you can start to move it around the neck. You really have to be like, okay, where is my 1 chord? Where is my 5 chord? Okay, here comes the 4 with the weird suspension Steely Dan thing, and then to get back and to do it while still sounding relaxed. Because we all know this melody, unless there's someone here that grew up in a place where that is not used at all, or a place where there aren't birthdays. And so there's really no excuse besides your own connection with how you hold on to melodies within your brain and your heart. So that's why I think it's like such a crazy, humbling thing. Because then you can expand on it. You know, maybe be like, okay, now I'm just going to do full chords. Do more triad pairs. Then you can start to be like, okay, I'm going to start really simple and just loop it. like set a timer for 20 minutes, and you're only gonna play Happy Birthday. But you're gonna loop it and start just with the melody, add in a little bit of complexity, add in the roots, then add in some chords. Eventually, like, work your way up to where you're improvising just within this structure, while still really trying to have respect for the melody. And then let it fall a little bit into abstraction. And then slowly bring it back. And then go back. And I think there's like a famous Lee Konitz lesson on this, but he does it with like the first A section of the song, All the Things You Are. But not everyone knows All the Things You Are. So this is a nice substitute, but I'm gonna just do an abbreviated version of that. So. Is it anyone's birthday today? Oh, that would have been great. But all right, so that's like a nice, like what I was saying in the beginning, kind of trying to revisit these fundamentals, because for a long time I feel like I was really valuing using complex ideas in really simple ways. Like, I learn my one crazy diminished lick, and I can only do it in a couple keys comfortably, and I don't really know why it works, but I know it sounds sick, and I know Tosin did it, and it sounds sick when he does it, but like, you know, it didn't really give me the same enrichment or like nourishment that I was like looking for within my relationship with guitar. So then I became a little bit more obsessed with trying to find these really simple ideas and using simple ideas in complicated ways. That way, you're more flexible. Yeah, maybe it's like a little less like NAMM show-off guitar, but it like you can apply it to a bunch of different songs and compositions and improvisations. And yeah, it, like for me, it ended up bringing a lot more joy, and I enjoyed the journey of working on that a lot more. But yeah, so that's another little like stopping place. Does anyone have any questions that come to mind? Yeah.
So, if I'm doing that, let's say I kind of get fixated into diatonic chords and things like that.
Yeah.
So, do you have any idea or suggestion on, for example, let's say I have the melody and I just thinking out loud, I see the top melody and I start just playing chords. Doesn't have to be diatonic, anything, just chords that actually have that note or extension as a 9, as a 13 or whatever, and just play around with any potential combination that has that note to see what works, or what would be your recommendation to get to something like you did, if that makes sense?
Like with a non-diatonic, like not being bound by diatonic harmony?
Yes, like you have your melody and you just want to add some harmony, but you just want to not be fixated into the typical progressions. You just like, how would you like explore more chords or things like that to add that harmony to that?
Yeah. So, just I want to make sure I understand your question. Is it like with harmony that would be a little bit more out?
Yeah.
For example?
Or just to explore new sounds with that melody.
Yeah. Okay. This is actually, thank you. Because this is, there was another subject that I kind of wanted to touch on, which is more of a concept, but it's like, what is out and what is in? You know, you hear, Michael Brecker play some lick over a tune that you know, and you're like, whoa, that was out. And it's, for me, out just means unfamiliar. And what you're describing is a really great way to feel comfortable within these spaces that feel unfamiliar. So, I think as long as you have a strong melody, you can pull off a lot. Was everyone in here a guitar player? Are there any like keyboard players? Okay, so we can talk shit about them. No, so like keyboard players and pianists are very fortunate because they can self-accompany way easier. Like, they can imply some really wild stuff, and since they're following themselves, it sounds way more confident. Like, if a guitar player wants to do the little side slipping thing, and we're in like A, and you want to go, it doesn't sound nearly as like, it doesn't sound like McCoy Tyner, not usually, because we can't force it there. But that was a little bit of a tangent. Not that I'm bitter about pianists. So like, if I am trying to take a melody that I like, let's take the melody of the C major scale, one of like the original melodies that we learned. And I'm just gonna be like, okay, can I play this convincingly just using major triads? That didn't feel, it felt a little out, but like the pushes and the pulls felt really natural to me because it was based in something that we know so well. So if like, you can start to like add in different chords, and sometimes it'll feel weird, but like if the voice leading stays good, I think you can kind of like definitely experiment as much as you want, because you end up finding stuff that you think works. Does that kind of answer your question a little bit?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Does anyone else have anything that was burning? Yes.
I have one question. This is gonna sound probably like I should already know this, but
Hey,
I'm
no,
very
don't for
familiar
that.
with like theory. I'm getting an idea of how that stuff works. But growing up, I was homeschooled, so I did everything by ear.
Mhm.
And at this point, what's happening now, and it's been like the Achilles heel for me, is I'm writing all this music on guitar, but I genuinely don't know what the hell I'm playing. Like people are asking, like, oh, are you moving from here? Are you moving from there? I couldn't really tell you. I'm just kind of playing. So how would one approach, I guess, like being confident in their fretboard knowledge to be able to actually like articulate what it is I'm doing? Do you know what I mean? That sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Because like on piano, it's very organized. It's laid out. What you see is what you get.
Totally.
Whereas guitar, you've got all these different positions, and then there's aspects of different tunings as well. So
Yeah, the tuning.
sticking with just standard tuning, how would one efficiently approach filling in that last gap potentially?
Okay, so for those on the live stream, I'm supposed to repeat the questions. Like, how do we work on fretboard knowledge?
Essentially. Yeah.
Essentially, because it's weird.
It's very
Like-
disorganized in my head compared to other instruments.
You know, I can confidently say that part did not come easily to me.
Okay.
I had to force it into my brain. It felt like I was at a party with a bunch of people I had met like a year ago, and I know they told me their names, but like I keep on in these I'm in these conversations. I'm like, yeah, man, it's good to see you too, and I'm just like, oh, I really don't. I feel like I should, but I don't. So I tried to gamify it, and I think learning all the note names on the low E string is not a big ask for most people. You know, knowing that that's an A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I think like part of it is putting in the work to learn, and part of it is unpacking guitar trauma into thinking that it is like this really big abyss that you have to conquer. Because really, like, if you know the low E string, you know the high E string, and you're already a third of the way there. You know?
Which I pretty much know my E string. So
Yeah, I
thank
mean,
God.
of course, like,
Okay.
so, but then I'm like, okay, if you can learn the E string, then you can probably learn the A string. Because it's right there, and it's like, those are like our safety nets. And if you know the octave trick, then like, okay, yeah, like you can do this pathway where like, okay, what note is this? Okay, I know this is an octave, and I know this is a G, and I don't really know this one cold, but I know I can deduce that is a G because of its relation to the other. And that's like, okay, that kind of feels like cheating, like I don't really know it. But if you get that process to be really fast, it's no different than you just knowing it. And I think a lot of us start with these little hacks or like little cheats, and then we just get faster and faster at them. Like if I'm trying to remember that this person's name is Mary, I'm gonna try to associate them with another person I know named Mary. I'll be like, okay, I know that, I remember they have the same name as this person, I remember I'm bad with names. That's the key of the story. But yeah, I think just taking your time with it and knowing, really solidifying the points that you do feel comfortable with and figuring out the octave shapes to build off of those. That way if you're like, this is a crazy part of the neck that I don't know, I can figure out that that's an F sharp.
Yeah, first position I'm like somewhat okay. It's the moment I start diving into,
Yeah.
and that's the thing too, is because with notating and all that, I'm doing like these weird rhythms and I don't really know what I'm doing. So it's trying to just fill in like lower register, if that makes, well, higher register.
Yeah,
but,
totally.
like,
I mean,
lower the neck.
I made flashcards. Like I was trying to just smash it into my brain, and it would keep on falling out, and then I just kept on like
Yeah.
trying to do it until I absorbed it all. I mean, and even now, if I have to sight read up here, if I haven't done it in a couple months, it doesn't feel fun. But like now, like fifth position, I'm pretty comfortable in, like you could wake me up in the middle of the night and I would like not feel too foggy. But it's like there's always going to be spots that like don't feel as good as others, and I think you know, not shooting yourself to death is important with this process. But yeah, definitely like, you know, just take it in small bites you know, it's all just, and build the landing points that you know you can base your relationships off of. Like, really, if it's like weird up here, and you really spend 2 weeks making sure you know that that's a G, all of a sudden the A and the B and the F sharp and the E feel way less like they're in the dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions, or should we keep talking about triads? Yeah.
I noticed you have like really organized phrases, and that's like really admirable thing. That so I just wanted to like ask, how do you work on your phrasing? And, like organize them.
Phrasing is a crazy thing, because it's like one of those things where you can like not be thinking about it and it feels great, and you can not be thinking about it and it feels terrible. And then, but just because you're really thinking about it doesn't mean that it's great. You know, guitar players are lucky in a way that we're not trumpet players. Trumpet players tend to have really good phrasing because they have to breathe. It's a physical limitation to not being able to like overplay. We can just go forever if we do. So, like this is kind of in line with the first example that I was giving. I don't know if you were in here for that, where we were just talking about with the G major scale, where if we're just like in G, and my goal is phrasing. You know, you can think in chunks, you know. Rest. I'm finding these like platforms of solid ground. Phrasing. So it's really just these chunks. And sometimes I'll try to sing the notes before I play them. And all of a sudden, like, you can only think in small chunks because my mental RAM gets like maxed out.
Hi, thank you. Sorry.
See ya. But I assume you're not only asking about when you're in like, I'm playing against a drone in a quiet room, and it's like the trickiest time to not overplay is when you're playing with other musicians that are just shredding. Like when the drummer just got off of his like church gig and he's just like amped, and all of a sudden you're like, how am I supposed to leave space when it's like everything's like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. So in a situation like that, it's still about like finding these like pauses. And I think once you switch into the mental headspace of call and response, and when the bass player and the drummer notice that that's what's happening, all of a sudden it's like, it's not the pressure of you, it's like, what's the best way to say it? It's not that like you have the responsibility to leave space. It's more so that like you are now in a conversation that naturally has space. And then all of a sudden the phrasing's good. And you don't just sound like a person on a microphone just talking for 5 minutes straight.
You're playing the solos in the sense of
Exactly. And when you get that interaction, all of a sudden I don't worry about talking too much, because there's this natural push and pull. But like, let's see. I don't want major, I want just give me fifths. So if I'm like it's like a faster thing. That was a longer one. Don't do anything for a while. If you comp for yourself, that also gives you time to, to not be playing just a bunch of shred. So. Breathe, and then all of a sudden you're like, not only are you like playing with, I wouldn't say that's the best phrasing, but like better phrasing than if I was just 16th notes the whole time. Because like if you think about what, like, have you seen like a good movie recently? Or like a good show?
I'm watching Dexter.
Tension and release, for sure. And like if Dexter was only stabbing, spoiler alert, don't mean to ruin it, the whole time, you wouldn't stop appreciating it. You know? Just like, have you ever played with a bass player that is playing a whole lot the whole time? And then have you played with the bass player where they did the one crazy lick on the double chorus, one song of the set, and that was like so much more impressive? I definitely prefer the latter, because then you're like, oh, it was restraint, and they can shred, and it's like, I don't know, it's like, I feel like it's way more admirable, but this also ties into comping, because you have to have good phrasing for comping too, and I feel like we don't think about that nearly as much. I've talked about this a couple times before, but has anyone heard of the phrase groove bank? Great. Okay. So, you're playing rhythm guitar, and you want to have good phrasing, and you have what is called a groove bank, and you're broke. You have no dollars to spend on any fancy stuff. So like let's do like an A dominant sound, like without distortion. I have $0. Maybe I have 5 now. I'm still earning like halfway through the verse. Oh, now back down to 5. Now I'm doing like little spins at the end of every phrase, but you don't want to do it all the time, because the bass player might want to do something there. Now if I really lean in, like James Brown, just because I wasn't playing anything like the whole time, then it's like, whoa, it changes, it like clears people's sinuses. And because you have to stay within your groove budget, and you can't overspend and go into, I don't want to keep the bit going, groove bankruptcy, but we've all played with musicians that are overspending their budget. And I think especially when you're playing with a singer, because a lot of times we're in the same register, it's really easy to be not very fun to play with if you're just kind of doing little riffs all the time, and then and you don't want to kill the vibe. But doing something like that and holding the responsibility of okay, I'm gonna keep it locked in, and maybe even really write a part where I'll be like, okay, so I'll just expand on that same groove, maybe every 4 times I'll do that whole push. And every 4th time of that, let's see if I can loop that. On the 3rd time now. Maybe I messed up the rhythm a little bit, but being able to lock in to that and just be like, okay, I now know this part and have this phrasing that's built into it, and there's maybe one of those times you can play some crazy stuff. Then all of a sudden you're treating your rhythm guitar with phrasing as well, and it's I have a very visual representation of it in my brain. But every once in a while I'll play at, did you guys know about Very Good Mondays at Gold Diggers?
Oh, yeah.
So sick. That is very relevant for that gig, because if people aren't approaching it that way and building parts with care and responsibility, it can get a little busy. But when it's not too busy, it is one of the most fun things I've ever been a part of. So, and I think doing that gig pretty regularly these last few years has taught me even more about that. When I was living in New York City, there was another regular thing called The Lesson. It was very similar. It was at Arlene's Grocery, and instead of it being funk fusion-y stuff, it was more live Catronata. It was crazy. It was crazy. But very similar value system, where it's you have to come up with a part. You're not here to noodle. You're here to add to the collective thing. And I think if you make sure you have that as the most valued aspect of your musical interaction, then it's hard to overplay. Yeah. Well, sick. Does anyone have any other burning questions? Or I can kind of go into triads I've been joking about. Cool, that means triads. All right. Talk about another thing that we can kind of take for granted. I think triads are just so important. It's most of the gigs I do, it's just based on triads. And most of the things I play, even the scales, if I'm thinking of a progression, just thinking about how the triads are moving, more so than it's this chord. It's more instead of it being G, it's more I'm really thinking about those notes and how the other notes it's like these are your nouns, these are your adjectives. You know, so when I'm building a phrase, just like valuing those and ending on nouns, like you know, especially in like bebop and stuff like that, it becomes even more apparent. But when you're comping, I really love to do like kind of pseudo pedal steel stuff because I end up like playing a lot of kind of like more pop Americana music when I'm doing sideman stuff, and we do a little E. We'll be in E. Are you guys hip to triad pairs? Have you heard of this phrase? All right. I'm seeing some yeses, some no's. Triad pairs are they're my favorite sound. You can go really out with them, but you can also use them in very simple ways. So, like what I was saying, within like, you know, let's say the E major scale, you have the E major triad, which we're gonna kind of treat like nouns, and then you get in like an F sharp minor 6 chord that has the other notes in it. You know, just all the other notes except for the E major triad. So I'm gonna take that super literally and just go like adjective, noun, adjective, noun, adjective, noun. And if I'm wanting to comp, that's great. I love that. But like not a lot of movement. So we have the E major and then the F sharp minor. Now, you can get really meticulous with doing this all over the neck, but I'll show you kind of in the middle neck to start. E, F sharp, E, F sharp, E, F sharp, E, F sharp, E. It's really good for harmonizing melodies and like picture background singers on like the Sam Smith gig or something. Throw in a 5 chord every once in a while, because now you have a chord you can play for the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6. You just are missing the 7. So you can do the 5 chord there. And then you're back. Other ways that you can use it as well. Like if I wanted to imply, you know, E major 7, that's a great way to do it. Or like anything that's kind of in that key. It's like an idiom that feels good to our ears. If I was trying to like do an E dominant thing, I could do a pairing of E and D major. It's a little less like gospel background vocal sounding. be some good pairings with that. You know, another common one is if I wanted to do, you know, let's say like an E Lydian sound. Now, if I wanted to do an E Lydian sound, what of like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chord gives you a Lydian sound? The 4, yeah, exactly. So if I go between the 4 and the 5 with that, let's do so this can be 1, 3, 5. If I do an A, if I go up a whole step, I get the 2, the sharp 11, and the 6 or the 13. You can mix and match between them, like. You can go down, but. And like that's a crazy sound, and you're not just stuck going, or you know, you can use it with your other kind of Lydian voicings. So that's another kind of triad pair thing that I really love to do. You also get like Herbie Hancock type stuff where it'll be like, you know, a triad pair of, you'll hear him, sometimes he'll do like weird, it'll be like kind of like A flat over G, you know, which kind of implies like fifth mode of harmonic minor. Like if I'm just gonna play the notes that these two triads give me. And then if you do it like that, it maybe sounds a little like on the nose. But like if I were to do, you know, if I were to do like a 2, 5 and C, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that push and pull can be really nice, you know, because you're all of a sudden you're like, oh, feels a little out, but then the out becomes in when you kind of know where that sound is coming from. Which I think implying those triads to get that sound feels way more. I think it sounds hipper than if you're just like, I'm gonna play fifth mode like that, because then it kind of sounds like you like learned a weird altered scale off of like a YouTube video or something, and like you haven't spent that much time with it. But if you know like the ingredients of it, and use it in a more subtle way, I think it can sound really sick. But so that's kind of like general triad pair stuff I like to think about, especially when you're like playing second guitar on a gig. It's really nice if there's like no keyboard player, because then you can kind of do some of these more keyboard playery things. That way, you know, if one person's doing like more of a funky short thing, or like they're more strummy, you can be more swelly and not just feel like you're stuck in CCM swelly the whole time. Nothing wrong with like a big reverb trail, but like, you know, I get a little bored if I do that for too long. But yeah, anyone have any questions? the back first, and then we can get you.
Okay. One of my favorite YouTube videos of all time is you on Noel Johnston's,
Oh, no way.
podcast thing, and
Yeah.
you go into like posture a lot. Like,
Yeah.
that was apparently big for you, like for like, I don't know, your second year at UNT.
Huge.
And it's like I need to go through that. So like, I don't know. Yeah, I have that like guitarist syndrome where I'm like, like that, and I use a footstool, but yeah, I feel like I need to adjust my thumb, and I don't know, this might be too specific, but can you just talk on that for a little while?
Yeah, totally.
Or whatever.
So, guitar is a funny thing,
Yeah.
because, like, you can't really see it right now, but I had a label maker, and I wrote the word posture and put it on my Big Sky. So my Big Sky just says posture on it. And because, like, guitar is a tense thing. It's a tense thing, Could you picture Stevie Ray Vaughan being like full Alexander technique? Like, maybe. I mean, but like, I feel like a guitar player that is talks about posture a lot is Julian Lage, and even he's like, it's a balance, And hearing Julian talk about guitar being a tense thing was very nice, because I'm like he's probably like one of the more zenned out guitar players around. So ultimately, keep in mind, I am the guitar player I am. I am not crazy shred, tapper, metal, prog guy, but I, for the most part, like to use big movements for big muscles for big movements and small muscles for small movements. That's what makes sense to me. So, to start off, I really like to almost, like, you guys can do this sitting down too, where like you hold out your arm like kind of in guitar playing position, and then we're just gonna like kill this joint, like we're like in the 90s doing The Robot or something. You can feel that weight, and it turns it into like a rotational thing. Like just that is enough for me to play a G. Maybe not like an F bar chord, like completely, but like that at its core of like my back muscles kind of holding this pressure that gravity is pulling against my arm is the core, like the root chakra of what energy you're using to play guitar. If you only are squeezing and you're ignoring the gravitational force that is always there, you're working way harder than you need to. And I try to like have my muscles be something that is maneuvering that energy than creating energy themselves. So whenever I'm like thinking about it, like that guitar feels a lot easier to play. Guitar also feels the hardest to play when I'm being the meanest to myself. So now, after that year at UNT where I kind of had to take a break from the instrument, also was a year where I was being extremely unkind with my thoughts towards myself. If guitar ever feels hard to play, I like go through a mental checklist, because I'm like, the setup, it's not that the strings are a day older, it's not that dude, he was a bad setup and it's like now I can't play, it's I try to like take a day and like make sure I'm stretching and I'm drinking water, and I maybe do some of these like emotional mental guitar calibration kind of exercises where I slow down and I really try to like see my reflection in the instrument again. But that to be said, I like to like really like thumb position. I like to just generally have it kind of behind whatever the center mass of my fingers are. Like if I'm playing here, it's kind of like a little bit up, and if I'm playing down here, it's like a little bit lower. But like I'll still like I'll still do one of those every once in a while. I'm not too strict with it, but I'm also not like, have you guys played like one of the Strandberg Ender necks? I'm not like totally in line with like that shape all the time. But a lot of it has way more to do with the pressure than like worrying about. I'm worried about like what the pressure's doing as opposed to like where it's coming from necessarily. They're both important, but I try to like picture like here's like the mental hack that I like to do is I like to picture the strings being magnetically drawn to the frets, and I try to practice playing fast slowly. So I know it's like kind of like a weird phrase, but like if I'm gonna practice, go back to our good friend the G major scale, practice playing fast slowly, I will try to get these connection points to be like, I want it to be like snappy, not not forceful, but like quick. Like when you hold two magnets together and it goes. And that helps me not overplay too much. Because it's like, if you do like a little calibration thing where like, oh, this is a fun one to do. Just play a G and slowly lighten it up so you get like vocal fry. It sounds terrible, and then it eventually cuts out. And then you bring it back really slowly. And you get this like, this like sense of buoyancy, and then you're like, oh, that's too hard. It goes back. And you bring it back, and you find this point in which you get a really full sound, but with like the least amount of effort it takes to get that sound. You do it with your other fingers. And now like it feels way, I feel a lot faster, but I'm not really like focusing on like the shred aspect of playing fast. It's more like the really small mechanical things that have to happen. Like, yeah. Other little technique things, I think while playing guitar can be a tense thing, having your head in a balanced place is really important. Just throughout your day. You don't want to be like this, phone. I do it, but I'm actively noticing it. Like I try to treat it like try not to have it like be a super shamey based association where, if you're like, oh, I'm thirsty. You're not like, oh, I'm thirsty, You're like, oh, I'm gonna drink water, and it's like you're like, oh, my head's forward. I'm like, oh, okay. I just that's the time to notice. It's a game of noticing, and you only win the game of noticing by noticing. And if you make it so like you lose it by noticing, then it becomes a weird. I know this is getting a little heady, but it's like, yeah, you just gotta like. Every opportunity you have to correct it and like soften your shoulders, take it. But then there's innately gonna be in between things. Like, do you ever like play like the keep up game with like a balloon when you were a kid? And you try to, you don't get mad at the balloon for coming back down. And if it hits the ground, you just throw it up again. It's like, it's a game that you're playing with yourself of just like, you're trying to like, oh, bad posture, I'm clenching my jaw. Oh, yeah, my shoulders got tense. And then like, there will be days where you're better at it and days where you're not as great at it, but ultimately it's just about going through that dance with yourself. And then all of a sudden it feels a lot less like stressful. Yeah. Does that kind of answer your question a bit?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, yeah, you're welcome. Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. My teacher the other day was talking about playing with your eyes closed.
Oh, yeah.
And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that, and is it like, because my playing right now is like, I'll get done with like on a solo, I'll get done with a phrase, and it's like, my eyes will sometimes get in the way. It's like, oh, I should play this shape after that.
Mm-hmm.
So is it like you already know where you're going, type of thing with your eyes closed, or is it like you're kind of guessing or you're more listening?
I think playing with your eyes closed can be a really good thing. I think guitar is also innately a very visual instrument. You know, I used to really try to avoid thinking in shapes until I realized I'm like the human brain is meant to look for patterns and things. You know, in the same way that, you know, a pile of laundry in the corner late at night can like look like a crazy monster when you're a kid. It's like we're looking for familiarity. So, you know, I don't go as far as like Tim Miller, where it's like literally like very visual things and then the sound that comes out of those, like his 2-1-2 stuff. But I think playing with your eyes closed, like I haven't practiced my eyes closed in a minute. See, I was aiming for the G. You know, and you end up playing notes that you maybe don't expect, but then your ear can get you out of them. I think it can be a good thing to practice, especially because sometimes you're gonna get a call to play on a TV show with an artist, and they're gonna want to be like, okay, we're gonna start with the room you guys are in full of smoke, and then it's gonna open up. All right, you ready to start all right, so it starts with guitar. All right, here's the click, go. And you can't see the lights on your Kemper. You know, like you can't see anything. So in that, it's like, you know, it's good to practice just for, you know, show reasons, but also like emotional reasons. I think it can help get you out of the visual shapes. But it's important to do both. Yeah. Yeah, what's up?
My name is Clancy, and first of all, like, thank you for coming and share with us.
Oh, of course.
When you are sharing your story, you mentioned like the room in your imagination, you feel like meditation, and you are like give yourself in a better mental state of everything. Yeah. So my question is like, because when you're talking, like I think we can all feel a calm and a stable in you. And how do you like balance your like your goal? When you are practicing, you have a goal, you try to achieve something, and not just the music goal, maybe the financial goal or the daily workout routine, everything in life. When it is feel a little bit too much, like how do you balance and maybe gamify all those things? Like, can you talk about this a little bit?
Totally. So he's talking about finding balance in basically juggling all these multiple goals, and like how to actually structure it so you can get them all done in a way that doesn't just stress you out, kind of.
Yeah.
You know, I think as we get older, you start to notice that you very much have different seasons in life. Like I remember hearing my parents talk about this, where it's like, oh yeah, I was like in a different season of life, and you know, now that you know, I'm turning 34 this year. I'm 33, and I've like had seasons where like I was like really working on Bach, and then seasons where I was really working on like jazz fusion, and then seasons where I really just cared about singer-songwriter music. And you know, those are a little bit more of macro examples. But then it's like, you know, you just gotta go with where you're feeling the wind at the time. Because I said this in the little interview thing that I did before this, but like the best piece of advice I could give for someone that's trying to like build their overall life routine and their career is like figure out what you really care about and don't build a career around cosplaying as something that you're not. You know, because then best case scenario, it's like you get the gig that's super gospel shred and you really just want to listen to Sufjan Stevens, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I got really good at this and my heart's not really in it, and then it's harder to find the longevity in any routine or any long-term goal. But I really love, you know, a little bit more of a practical answer. I love a color-coded schedule. I love, like, you know, at the top of the week, I'll figure out when I can go to the gym and exercise. I try not to get, like, so I don't, like, meal prep or anything like that. So I try not to fly too close to the sun with the holding on, and I try to, like, balance it with the letting go. But I hold on enough that I'm like, okay, I got called, it was like right after we got this schedule, I got called to play with the bass player Hadrian Farad later today. Got the tunes 24 hours ago. And some of them are like chill, some of them are a little less chill, and I'm like, okay, this is what I have to do tonight. And like I set a timer, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get like 3 of these done, and then I'm gonna go for a walk outside, make dinner, come back, do the other 3. And that's kind of how I structured it. So I'm like, okay, I can definitely get this done. And then it's like, you know, just I think I quit drinking a couple years ago, and not, you know, no high horseness about that at all. It's just, you know, it's what's been working for me. But the benefit of that is that I have a lot more free time at night. So I tend to, like, you know, make sure I like read whatever I want to be reading, like, or really get like a morning practice in with guitar that's maybe a little bit more technique focused, and then like really take an hour or 2 in the afternoon to work on compositions. Or, you know, the thing that's on my docket right now is there's this pianist in New York named Andrew Friedman that I used to play with a lot when I was living there, and we recorded a duo album, and he's gonna be in town. So I have to like prep this session for that, so then we can to do like just make sure all the basic EQs are there, so then it'll be ready for when he gets here. So like that's on my list, and I think I have a day blocked off next week to kind of do that. But I'll plan things pretty far in advance, like within like 2 weeks. If I'm like, I know in a month this needs, like, I need to have the music worked up for this gig, I'll try to like figure out a designated time to make that happen. That's what helps me. Sometimes you get calls for gigs that, like, and you just gotta drop everything to do it too. So it helps to get really good at learning music quick, because I think that's the biggest time suck that can happen. Yeah. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Kind of similar question. Maybe it's a more philosophical and subjective question, but you seem pretty structured, which resonates with me a lot. And I wanted to ask something about how did you find your path? Like, how do you? I'm struggling right now to know what I really want to do with my music career. And in your experience, what has been your compass in those like cloudy moments that you don't know where to go or what to do? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a real thing that a lot of us go through. So, like, if I can give you any validation, you aren't alone in feeling like that is a part of your journey. And I think, you know, I started playing professionally when I was like 16. And when I was 16, I only wanted to sound like Kurt Rosenwald. That was it. Didn't care about food. Didn't it was only that. And I'm no longer like Kurt's great, but you know, I was all about the modern jazz thing. Moved to New York City after college, and was just like I was just like doing Lage Loon transcriptions, Kurt transcriptions. You know, Galad had released his first couple records. I was super into those. It's like, I'm gonna go to New York and do this. I go to New York, And for whoever I was in that moment, in combination with what the scene was in that moment, it didn't do the thing I thought it was gonna do for me emotionally. I didn't feel very inspired to like work on bebop and like to write all these songs where the audience can't tell where one is at the time. And I was feeling really lost, and then saw the singer-songwriter Julia Easterlin play at Rockwood before Rockwood closed down. And it was like this crazy scene. It was like Rockwood still had 3 stages, and there was like really cool people playing every night, and like I just like was ugly crying in the middle of Rockwood one day, like to one of her songs, and I was just like, I want to work on singer-songwriter music. So I used to like write some as a kid, like when I was in middle school and high school, but then like jazz really took that over. And I kind of followed that path for a bit. Fully went into it, like had an EP that like did well enough that I'm like, oh, this is gonna be the thing. Like a song got 1 million streams, I'm like, oh, new path. And it like didn't, to be frank, like I kind of got bored with it, and I like postured myself emotionally to go through this big pivot, and then but like guitar was still always there, and I was still doing sideman stuff, and then eventually like I kind of fell out of love with like singing. Singing's hard, and I didn't love the grind of singing as much, but I like the grind of working on guitar more. So there was a lot, like the pool that guitar was way deeper for me. And then like I moved to LA and started to like, I was feeling really lost because I'm like, oh, like I switched things. Really, everyone still thinks about you like you're the same person. Like the box that you're putting yourself in is the strictest within your own brain. And then the pandemic happened, and I'm like, I was teaching on this like online platform. Like, am I a teacher? Am I gonna have to start a YouTube channel? And then, you know, got out of the pandemic. I started playing with Blue to Tiger, and then Dove Cameron, and like a couple other like pop people, and Byhold. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess like I'm gonna be like pop guitar player. And I'm like still like doing modern jazz and contemporary stuff, like kind of contemporary Americana music on the side. But I kind of stopped writing during that period. And then it was like 3-4 years that I was just doing like sideman stuff. And then had a lot of therapy and a lot of like journaling to be like, I care about guitars so much. I fell back into wanting to write on guitar again, and ended up like coming out with a record like last year, and I have like 2 more records that are recorded right now. So I'm like on this big like kick on guitar, and I don't know, maybe in a couple years that focus will be on having a kid, or like, you know, get really into skydiving or something. I don't know, but a lot of that has just been finding the joy, because on one hand there's part of me that wishes, oh, it says if I would have just done what I'm doing now back then, I would be so much farther, like I should have done that, and I'm comparing myself to a version of myself that doesn't exist. And you only lose when you do that, because the game is that you lose, and I don't want to play that game anymore, you know. So now I'm just kind of following my heart with it. Luckily, you know, I think the pop stuff is really fun, and there will always be a space in my heart for that. Like last year, I ended up stepping away from the Blue to Tiger camp, and then last year, it was I didn't have like a whole lot of like touring stuff, and then all of a sudden, I got the call for the Maggie Rogers gig, which I feel like this is a story worth telling, not as like, I played with Maggie Rogers, but it was a crazy situation because my friend was MDing, and one of the guitar players stepped wrong when they were playing basketball and snapped their Achilles. I'm on a gig. It was like it was for you know that lamp thing, it's like a songwriter school. I don't know, songwriter school in like West Hollywood. I had just learned 17 songs pretty quickly to do this showcase for them. And there was like, 15 singers, they were all doing one song. And I get a call and they're like, hey, there was like, something came up. Are you maybe available for the next month, starting tomorrow? And I'm like, yes, I am. I'm like, cool, well, like, I'll call you later today. And then got the call, what was it? It was like on a Wednesday. No, I got the initial call on a Tuesday. I got greenlit for the gig halfway through Wednesday. And then I had to fly out Thursday at 6 a.m. to play a show Friday. That's 90 minutes long in front of 10,000 people. And I've done like medium, like kind of big shows, but like not that big. That was a couple thousand more than like what I had ever done. And it was like the big old gust of wind that life gave me. I'm like, okay, I guess this is what I'm gonna do. Maybe this will be for the month, maybe it'll be for the next 10 years of my life, you never know. But it seemed fun and it was exciting and I felt like it was gonna push me. So I like made flashcards, I like picked a flight with a layover just to like, so I could buy myself a little bit more time to learn the songs before the MDs were gonna like quiz me on it in the hotel room when I landed. And yeah, like basically I blacked out those 2 days and then did the show and was just at a little tiny cheat sheet, but was pretty much off book. But then, Maggie took a break, and so it ended up not being a very long-term, like, playing relationship. But it was a crazy couple weeks, and then that, like, kind of put me in this headspace of, like, okay, I don't know when something like that is gonna happen again and just completely take over my life, so I want to really prioritize kind of writing. That's what I really care about. I want to take care of my body and write music and work on my relationship with the guitar. So then really like kind of locked in and wrote a bunch of songs that I really adore, and then figured out how to fund recording them, and now I'm kind of on the tail end of that process. So I don't know if I have a clear answer of like, of you should do this or that or whatever, but I think finding the joy and the peace and the excitement within that process is really important, because like fall isn't a failed summer. It's just fall. And spring will come after that. And like you just gotta find the way to move through that, and like that's your own vibe.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that helps a lot. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I have a kind of off-topic question.
Sure.
How relevant do you think it is to learn to read music nowadays, and how did it like personally affect you when you did? What kind of
Ooh.
influence did it have on you as a musician and separately as an artist?
Well, as I'm sure you know, guitar players are notoriously terrible at reading.
I've heard.
Because it's a hard instrument to read on. It's not our fault. So I wouldn't say I'm the best reader. I'm not like one of those LA session dudes that can just like go in and read with the symphony and not make a single mistake. But I did do a lot of reading when I was at University of North Texas. And I would say, ultimately the most important thing is what you play. And, like the band Snarky Puppy, they don't get charts. They just get the recording. Most of the time, you're just gonna get the recording. So reading isn't that relevant most of the time. But when it is relevant, it is so relevant. Like I got called to do like a big band gig with, Remy LaBouffe, he's a good saxophone player. He runs one of the colleges out in Colorado. But he hit me up and he's like, hey, like, can you do this gig? I was in Texas recording an album right before, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to learn the music. And if I didn't feel comfortable sight reading, that would have been a train wreck. But yeah, like the short answer is it's not important at all until it is, and then it is extremely important. And I like the gigs that require reading. I think that they're fun. It makes my brain feel smarter. But like, you don't have to do. It's not like, a nail in the coffin if you don't know how to read. I would definitely know how to read like charts pretty well. Like, maybe not a crazy saxophone solo that you're doubling with like a fusion band, but it also depends on what style of music you want to play.
Right.
Yeah. Adrian learns most music just by ear, which was shocking because I sent him church. He's like, oh, I don't. And I'm like, okay, and then he knew the tune better than everyone else.
I mean, if you gave most of us the option, we'd probably choose the recording.
Yeah.
So, where are you guys playing later today?
It's like a Soho House thing.
Okay.
Like, I don't really know too much about it. I think it's a little bit last minute.
Sure.
But yeah.
Okay.
I think reading's fun. I think it's playing Bach really slowly is good for your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow, time is flying by. So we have like 10-ish minutes left. Does anyone else have any other questions? It doesn't need to be hyper philosophical or anything. Yes, in the back.
What are your inspirations?
Ooh, my inspirations. They've shifted over time. When I first started playing guitar, I was really into Grant Green. Really loved Grant Green. And I had like an Epiphone Casino because it looked like his, and I took like a year of guitar lessons from this guitar player, Corey Christiansen, and he really loved Grant Green. He like wrote a book on him like shortly before I started taking lessons with him. And I remember I did the solo Green's Greenery off of Grandstand. And that was the first thing I ever transcribed. It's blues, it's great. It's funky, it's super fun. And then shortly after that, I got a little bit more into like Pat Metheny and John Schofield. Had like probably 6 months to a year that I was really hyper focusing on them. Kurt Rosenwinkel, like the Live at the Village Vanguard, was a huge impact of like my high school time. And Chris Potter followed Red Line, also Live at the Village Vanguard. Those are really important records to me. And then like it kind of, I went through like listened to a lot of like Vlad's records, Locke Loon's records. I remember checking out a lot of like Julian Lage when he was first like coming up, and like he had some like really cool arrangements that I loved. And then I got like really into Radiohead and like the moodier Brad Meldau stuff, and like the Bad Plus, and like a lot of like not guitar things, and like listened to Sufjan Stevens, Carrie and Lowell a bunch, like a lot of Andrew Bird. Yeah, and then kind of got into more like contemporary classical music, and like I've spent a lot of time listening to Arvo Part. His like, there's even like a best of Arvo Part album on Spotify that has a lot. I mean, it's the best. Can't be any better than that. But it's very like slow moving, like cool harmony, tensions releasing. It's like so cool to listen to. And now I it's just kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of the music I listen to now is to like learn. But like I listened to the new Miley album yesterday at the gym, and that Sean Everett produced it, and it's sick. I haven't really checked her out too much, but that intro track is amazing and beautiful. Brittany Howard is also someone I've been listening to a lot recently. That Sean produced that record as well. And yeah, so it's kind of a spread of like singer-songwriter, shreddy modern jazz, and Americana, and classical music.
I kind of thought of something else after that.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned the period of time where you got into like Radiohead and kind of like non-guitar sort of things. I was just curious if your like implementation of the volume pedal was at all influenced by like more atmospheric sort of sounds and not so much literal trying to sound like a guitar.
I think it has to have. It's like, I use the volume pedal a lot.
I know.
I like, that's been the one consistent pedal on my board for a long time. Because even just like when you're comping, I love like, you know, it's better with reverb, but because I don't like the pog thing where it just rolls off the attack all the time. Like things like that. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from listening to string players like violinists and cellists. Also keyboard players being able to like do the little things. There's definitely like weeks where I'm just trying to make guitar feel like anything but a guitar. And then it ends up sounding like guitar anyway, but it's fun. Yeah, I really do love the volume pedal. Recently figured out you can make these not scratchy by using rubbing alcohol on them. Get a little, clean the ribbon, which I wish I would have learned 4 pedals ago. But now I know. And it doesn't, no static at all. So hopefully this one will just last forever. Yeah. Yeah.
It might sound maybe like a little abstract of a question, but I think it kind of relates to what you were talking before about phrasing and, you know, the saying what you hear thing and not hearing what you play. But how do you think you balance like emotionally expressing yourself within the instrument with the rational part? Like, you know, you mentioned like singing the melody and just like really playing the melody that's in your head. That to me sounds more like an emotional connection. Whereas the rational aspect would be like, oh, I'm gonna hit these chord tones, I'm gonna outline these chords, use these scales. Because I have a teacher here that he's always saying that when you practice, you tend to be as rational as possible, because you know you're practicing maybe with self-imposed limitations. Oh, I'm gonna target this chord, work on this position. But when he's performing, he's always like, no, I'm thinking all about the melody. I'm letting myself go, you know. So how do you relate with that quote in any sense, and how do you try to balance this thing, if this makes sense at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think practicing with a more linear approach and then really trying to let go when you play live is a really natural balance that happens. Then you also can play a really bad note live, and then you start to focus on what you're playing a little bit more. So I think life finds a way of humbling you in those situations. And yeah, like I've spent so much time thinking about scale degrees. I'm almost always thinking about them. But then when I'm playing live, I tend to, I guess also when I'm practicing, I start to become way more, it's not like synesthesia where I'm like picturing colors or anything, but it's more of like, what is the atmosphere? It's like I think of the song as like the set and the setting and the lighting and how the air feels, you know, like what is, like I almost can like feel what the humidity would be when I'm playing a ballad, and it's kind of hard to describe with words, but I think as long as you're really focusing on something, and whatever your intention is, having that strong intention can be a really good guide for your relationship within playing music in that moment. And when you're practicing, I think, you know, having shapes and structure and limitation can be a really great guide. And when you're playing live, you know, completely ignoring what you play and only listening to the drummer and the bassist and the keyboard player can be a really great guide. Because then you're just hearing what you wish what a guitar would be playing in that moment. So to answer your question, it's like there's a time and a place for everything, but I really do like that approach that your teacher mentioned. Yeah. Adam, did I see your hand?
Yes. What's your tips regarding releasing your own music and that process?
Oh, that is a good question. Also, this stool somehow got squeak here.
Rubbing
you
alcohol?
can use isotope.
Yeah.
Or like squeak.
Like squeak.
You know, it's hard. It's a hard emotional process that is also very easy because you're just like clicking a button and then it's out in the universe. But for me, I would rather release more music that I wish I would have what's the right way to say this? The thing that weighs on me heavier is not putting something out. Even though putting something out is stressful in a lot of ways and takes a lot of logistics, and you know, you can never really check all the boxes. And you know, it's like your instrumental fusion record isn't gonna have the same approach as like a Benson Boone album release. And budgets are limited. That's a real thing. Sometimes you have like some crazy friend or a relative that can help you with like 10 grand on the record, and you can record in a studio, and like maybe you can do some live videos, and you can do, you know, a little bit of a PR thing for like a month, or like a radio thing. And it's really about figuring out like what your resources are and what the best way of spending them is, you know. So it's like you can look at someone, like if you look at someone that you're like comparing yourself to, because we all do that. You're like, oh well, Pritesh just released this record, and he like he did like a release show. Oh, how did he do this random show in St. Louis? Like, how did he do that? It's like, oh, it's, you know, maybe he had like a random connection there that like he feels like, oh man, this just like looks like a fancy thing, but it's like my aunt is best friends with the owner of this place. And you start to like find all of these like little things that you're like, oh well, like I'm not really doing it, but you kind of are, you know. Like for my last record, I called in some favors with friends that work in film, and we were able to do some like pretty cool looking videos for not a whole lot of money, and it felt super worth it. But it you know, I opted to not do a PR thing in lieu of doing the videos. But then for these next couple records, I'm like, okay, is there any way I can like finesse the PR stuff? That being said, the most important thing is like, you know, if you don't put it out, no one can hear it. And if it's really good, the music speaks for itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Adam didn't like my answer, so he's...
No, I'm late. So,
No, you're
so
okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one last question.
Who wants to be the last question?
One last question from Shaw here, and then we are almost pretty much done.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you say you like to make your guitar sound like anything but a guitar.
Mhm.
What exactly do you think of?
Ooh, I think in textures, I think this applies to different textures a lot more. Like, you know, I do love reverb and delay, but I like using it in ways to kind of maybe getting like things. Or like, it almost feels more like a weird patch, but it's not like super idiomatic guitar. I also really like, sometimes I'll use these, it's like these synth effects. You have to be responsible. It's easy to go overboard. But when I was starting to mess with these, I'm like, oh, it's not that great at tracking. It's like, it'll kind of like freak out a little bit, but I started to figure out like, oh, if I play both those notes at the same time, it drops way down. That one's bad. So that's like, that does not sound like a guitar anymore. But like having that go on while like the big keyboard pad's happening and the bass player has like an OC2 and it's like low,
Right.
can be crazy.
Do you take a lot of inspiration from the keys? Because that's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, a lot. Like I try to be a guitar player through the avenue of like a cellist and a keyboard player and a drummer. I try to like meet at guitar. Yeah.
Well, I think we're out of time, so thank you again, Horace.
Thanks for having me.